on the eve before Canada Day. The owner needed to find a contractor who was willing to immediately come in and begin work so that water could be restored to those units. With our assistance from the town, a contractor was found for the private owner so that they could begin immediately. And the first thing that that contractor did was replace the valves so that they could isolate the leak. And I believe all but 12 of the units were restored with regular service and on Thursday. And then before Thursday was done itself, the other 12 units had temporary water to them. I believe those 12 units still have temporary water to them while they finish the rest of the repair lines on that are needed at the immediate leak.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions? Okay, I do have one question with regards to that as well. And that was, I understand that we provided water and showers if the residents needed the showers. Were they ever used?
I don't believe the showers, because we were able to inform the residents of the park that if they needed a shower Wednesday night or if they needed a shower, Friday and onward until they were restored service, that they were able to use the pool. I don't believe that was necessary. Before that needed to be utilized, water service had temporary or permanent water service had been restored in time for that. There was water delivered to each residence with instructions as well that if they needed more fresh water, potable water, that they were able to go get that from either droplets or the co-op, and then they could be reimbursed for any extra that they needed. I also believe that the water was restored before any of that had to be utilized, but we had that plan in place. We wanted to make sure from the town's perspective with utilities, because we had shut the water off until the leak internally was fixed, that people in the heat wave had access to potable water.
Well, thank you, Director. And kudos to you and your staff for doing that, because that's a tremendous thing to offer the residents in that area. It wasn't our line that went down, and I'm glad to see that we stepped up and helped those residents in that area. Does anybody else have any questions for any of the other items that were brought up? No, sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, the air conditioning in the Evergreen Center, when was that going in? Again, because of the heat, that's an important item.
It would be before the end of July. I believe it was the third week of July they had scheduled to come in, and that was based on the contractor's availability to come in and install.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I do have one question on the sewer relining. So, Director Wagstaff, can you tell us how that goes? I noticed one of the roads that I was traveling on the weekend was 51st, and I know that that's one of the roads that was earmarked for the relining. Can you tell us what kind of work is done to begin that project? Because it looked like the road was all torn up and going up people's lawns, and I just wanted to find out exactly what extent of people can expect.
Well, that's site dependent, because some of the sites are going to require more above ground disturbance than others. So I can't emphasize more, it's site dependent. I will use one example. There's one location, and the landowners are well aware of this at this point, where there was a very mature hedge, significantly inside what needed to be unearthed in order to get at the relining and to get at the manholes to be able to access. So depending upon the site, it'll depend upon how much above ground disturbance there is.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we have no other questions. Sorry, Councilor Bennett.
It probably is a comment, but I will ask, any chance of getting a quote on power washing that reservoir so it doesn't look so mangy?
You're talking about a repaint of the North Reservoir?
Well, if it needs repainting, fine, but I just wondered if we could do something with power washing at a minimum.
I don't think it's dirty. I do believe that it is a paint job, and that is not part of the scope of this current project in the budget.
CEO?
Yeah, I believe this was discussed before, and we can't do nothing with it until after the repairs are complete. After the repairs are complete, I do think we're looking at a painting, refreshing off that water reservoir at that point in time. But it cannot be done while we're still having construction on it.
No, I understand and I
Yeah,
appreciate
but-
the info. Thank
Okay.
you.
Council Overwater?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. That's a good point to bring up, and maybe something that could be ran through the Public Art Advisory for some sort of mural to be painted on there so it looks, aesthetically pleasing versus just a hunk of concrete sticking up in the air. So maybe we can look at that in budget talks too. Thanks. You'll make a note of that, right, Director Wagstaff?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Councilor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. This is totally going back to the wayfinding. I know we've discussed this in past, and just refresh my memory. The signs that are on the outskirts of town, the back side of them, are we going to do something along the lines of put "Thank you for visiting Olds" or "Please come again"? Or, I know we discussed it at one point in time, and perhaps this will be service level discussion later, or budgetary discussions maybe in the fall. But have we started to look into any of that kind of a process yet?
It can be done. It's relatively inexpensive, but there hasn't been any work done on exactly what would go on the reverse side of those signs.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Wagstaff. Just to follow up on that, would we have a discussion with regards to that at the next PNP or at somewhere down the road? Where we're looking at having a discussion with council about what we're putting on the back of that?
Do I have a choice in answering when you said or somewhere down the road? Because that's the one I would choose.
Okay, so no time soon. CAO Merritt.
Definitely, we'll put it on the next PMP discussion in September. We may have an update on it before then. It's something we have looked into, and as Doug had given an update a few months ago. It is definitely something we can do. We just want to make sure we have the right messaging going on the various signs, but it's something we'll be able to give an update on.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I'll call a vote. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move along to presentations and delegations. We have 4A is Economic Development Secretariat. CEO Merritt.
Thank you, Deputy. Larry Wright is going to do a presentation in regards to the Secretariat and basically where we're at with our tourism development strategy. So Mr. Wright is the chair of the Olds Economic Development Secretariat. So Mr. Wright, please make your way to the podium.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's Chair, Mayor, and Council. You seem much larger in real life. And thank you for taking a few minutes of your valuable time here this afternoon. Behind the scenes for the last 6 or 7 months, we've been working very diligently with our Secretariat group and working towards tourism committees and BR and E&I. And recently we spent more time with the tourism strategy. Coming out of COVID, it's very apparent that our entire community is just ready to go. Whether it's a special event, sports, you name it. And we really want to get out in front of that as much as possible. We've actually even talked to a few people about Christmas, for God's sake. So anyway, we're just trying to get out in front of things. Anyway, why would we have a strategy? Well, I think Kelly's got everybody trained to think in strategic terms now, so we're just trying to follow through with that regards. Okay. How are we clicking this? Oops, I lost it there. I'm not trained. I'm used to Zoom. Okay.
So just scroll down.
Okay, just scroll. There you go. Anyway, why a strategy? All of our projects and all of our work that council, admin, exec have done over the last couple of years has led to strategic development. We're just trying to follow through on that basis. And these are our key points we're trying to do coming out of the Secretariat, Chamber of Commerce, and many others. Set direction and priorities, self-explanatory, simplify decision-making. There's no complex decisions made around here, is there? I think so, yeah. Drive alignment. We know we have a diverse group of organizations within our community, and one of our goals is to continue to bring everyone together despite changes in membership and different avenues and things that are occurring due to COVID and other things. Communicate the message. We've talked and talked and talked about our brand being the town of Olds. And we want to make sure that we bring everybody together on those points. And that's, so those are the key points. Again, we've had so many changes within our town because of COVID. We've had so many changes in our levels of government because of COVID. We've had so many changes in the oil and gas industry. We've had so many environmental changes. So we need to maintain a strategy, look at things in the new light of day, beyond COVID, look at our common view of success. And there's been a lot of good work done during COVID. When I look at Michelle, Community Services, Fire Services, doing all their meet, greets, and all their wonderful things they've provided to the community. And you see that, and that's success to me. Including the grad I managed to get in a truck the other night, therefore. And they didn't throw me out, so. But we need makes opportunity for willing community members and stakeholders to join us on these committees. And that's the very basics. And what does that look like? Back when we were writing the straw dog, the Secretariat, we did an outline of definitions and items and actions. And so we could have great discussions within the Secretariat. And Director Wagstaff was part of those and some of the other executive staff. And we had to anchor these things in definitions. And we have those in front of you today. And tourism is defined as the act and process of spending time away from home in pursuit of recreation, relaxation, entertainment, and leisure while making use of commercial provision of services. And we certainly would like to provide commercial services. Tourism, overlaps, other activities, interests, processes, including but not limited to business, conferences, sports, tournaments, competitions, environmental eco-tours, extreme adventure recreation, agricultural tourism, art and cultural festivals and celebrations, destination tourism. I'm not sure about casino, but anyway, we'll go with nature features and what we know, breweries. And I think that word art sort of just resonates with one of the comments from a couple of seconds ago maybe, but anyway, move right along. What does that look like for the town of Olds? The town of Olds wishes to continue to provide avenues for volunteers to contribute their time, talent, and treasury to initiatives that enhance the quality of life in Olds. And how are we going to do this? The Town of Olds Economic Development Secretariat was created in the summer of 2019. It consists of the Town of Olds Economic Development staff, including the Operational Services Department, Council, CEO, Executive, along with members, Olds Institute for the Community, Regional Development, and Olds Chamber of Commerce, and Olds College. We would like to take this little moment to recognize Mark Johnson. He's Chamber of Past President and original member of our Secretariat. Now, I'd quietly say Mark sustained an injury recently and we're hoping he recovers rapidly. But we do want to recognize Mark with all his good efforts. And so what's the pyramid look like here? I think it's pretty simple. CAO is their guiding light on the top of the pyramid. Economic Development Secretariat is in that supporting role, and then Tourism Committee is within the bottom in the next structure of the pyramid. If we had another slot in there, BRI&E would be also added to there eventually. Our mandate. Tourism Committee is responsible for facilitating the development of the local tourism economy through identifying strategic priorities. We've already hit those. Securing partnership funding, government, everyone, private. Fostering community brand identity, Town of Olds. Ensuring that there's a line between tourism-related objectives and activities of the Town of Olds, stakeholders, local and regional initiatives. And we really want to encourage the visitor experience in Olds. And I know when I'm talking to the Secretariat, they keep coming back to event, which Michelle well recognizes, but also the whole tourism accommodation, the meals, and everything else that goes along with that. That's the way we see it. Now, we took a little different process here. We considered, as we got through the strategic goals and priorities and all that we would consider this as a project. So we're using basic project management principles. And so you'll see about 3 phases, proposed timelines. And that's why I wanted to come to council at this point in time, so you can see how this will run through till December, because it'll take time. It will take time. But also, when you're doing this as a project development, you have different bits and pieces. And if you've ever done construction work or other project development, you know the critical path is always obscure, gets in your way, and inevitably you get a COVID, you get an oil and gas, you get a fire, you get an event, and you have to change your process, timing, and gears. So that's why we tried to build a simplified process in 3 phases and identified each one with our timelines and our process before we come back to council for the final approvals at December, in that time frame. Just in time for Christmas. Anyway, we're going to ask our public at large to join, and we're looking for specific folks. In our straw dog that we wrote some time ago, we identified the public participation level of membership in that. But also, we need a couple of key town staff to run it. That's the way it has to be. We just don't have enough people to do everything. We're a little stretched for resources, so that's in the CAO's hands. Public members, we're looking for a really wonderful cross-section of people. Hotel accommodation, education, artisans, financial institutions, sports and entertainment, community groups, service clubs, digital telecommunication, business owners, operators, and for MJ developers. And that, if you question me on that one other time. And that, thank you. And economic development organizations. You look at the subgroups at the college and some of our other subgroups, whether they be Uptown, ORE, even the West Side groups that are different and unique unto themselves in that. You want to consider all of these folks and aspects to really have a strong committee across the board. Yeah, and again, we're just going back to the basics. Research, analyze, develop, and bring forward programs. Get to the business recommendations for the Secretariat. And we need everyone to work together, not be divergent groups in that. And we put in here that we need to do a self-evaluation process at the end of a term, end of a year, whatever fits best. We know that with the ups and downs of the economy, the ups and downs of changes of business, people, and groups, we really need to do that to keep resources together. So Yeah, our process will follow our normal town policies and procedures. We really would like some active recruiting. We're concerned right now that business coming out of COVID maybe doesn't have the time. But I think we need to make time and help them get there. I think that's really, really critical. And that, and particularly food services, accommodation, fuel, grocery stores, all those key folks in the college. And the sooner we get going, the sooner we'll be ahead for the future. Thank you. We had about 20 people between all of our organizations, our internal staff, and everyone working this over a considerable amount of time. I hope it's fairly clear. We reduced it and cut it down a little bit, so thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Appreciate the presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. So, Mr. Wright, will you be putting a call out in the paper, or are you targeting specific organizations for, to be on this committee?
We'll probably advise all our specific organizations plus the news media, and that's the only fair way, and that's the way our process works. And it may be difficult with people on holidays and vacation with the school year just getting out, but we'll be patient.
Yeah, we have a process in regards to getting public members, whether it's for council. It's a bit different for administration, but we'll basically make sure that it's a cross-section, and we'll have a process to follow to make sure we get the people we want to sit on this committee.
Any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps through yourself to the CAO, there's been a lot of time and energy put into tourism by the municipality in a number of years. This appears as though we're starting somewhat fresh. The previous strategies that came forward through community services and such are not mentioned. Are we at a start fresh basis, or is there anything that's been gleaned from the community that may give us a leg up versus just starting fresh?
It's not a total refresh, but it is definitely a new start to tourism, because it's now going to be in the town's hands in regards to the policy that was approved last year, to the strategy that we've developed. We'll be utilizing the Olds Destination Collective Fund as part of this strategy as well. And we have been tapping in, as Mr. Wright has already talked to, not only Olds Institute and the Chamber of Commerce, but we are also tapped into the college. So it is an expanded group, and with having this new lens, first time a committee has been formed to deal with tourism specifically. We'll have the business lens as well, and we will have staff appointed to it, so we basically have it well-rounded within that. It's not a isolated committee, but it's one that basically has all the town staff available to support it. So definitely not building it just from the ground up. We've taken a lot of the good advice already from other people of how to get this. And as you will recall, that our tourism strategy was based on the Olds Destination Collective Fund, so to speak. So those pillars are still in place, and they will be enhanced as this committee has an opportunity to basically look at that. And I think I've indicated in the past, I really would like this committee to look at the Olds Destination Collective Fund and get their thoughts on what's going to look like in 2022 before we bring it to council to get any approvals or changes to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just an additional comment. I tortured some of our staff with going back in time to 2005 and about 40 documents, levels of plans, procedures, and processes. So they're well aware of all collective intelligence in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I like the idea of your tours. I think we can also tap into the County of Mountain View. I have personally gone on their ag tour their tour around the whole county, and we ended up at the brewery at the college. So, you know, there was lots of really neat and exciting things that we have within our area. You know, going to the dairy barns and seeing how automated they are was just amazing. And I think we could incorporate that into our whole tourism part with our town as well.
Good comments. Mayor Majishka.
I think every tour should end up at the brewery. No, it's fantastic work. Thank you so much, Mr. Wright, for all your work on this file. And I know that certainly it's a reimagining, but not a total restructure. But we appreciate the work and you have, and all of the administration and all of our partners have done. Thank you.
You bet. Mr. Wright.
Yeah, just in line with Council Overwater's comments. Last year, Legacy went together with our local artists and created the Paint the Barn project all through the county. I've talked to Red Deer Tourism about sponsoring a rally circuit all through this area and donated last Christmas full-scale copies of Paint the Barn, and I'd like to join Red Deer Tourism in bringing this way and join with the county just to sponsor a fun event like that. So, sorry, that's my last comment. I'll be quiet now.
No problem. That sounds like a great event. Lots of fun. Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Your Worship. I think at our last report from the Economic Development Secretariat, there was going to be some work done to get some baseline statistics around businesses in the community, how they're impacted, and what COVID is like. I just wonder if Mr. Wright could provide an update on the work that's being done in that area.
We've went through brownfield redevelopment. We went through empty storefronts. We've just been going through what businesses post-COVID are right now, but we're also looking for the opportunities. Now, I can't provide a detailed report today. I want to focus on tourism. I'm more than happy to come back with that other information. Now, if you look through the strategy, though, we've also initiated, I'll just have to find the right page here, as part of our process and procedure, creation of the tourism and visitor inventory, and that's underway, and working on the other bits and pieces of the strategy and development of the implementation plans. So this is all inclusive. Please keep in mind, though, parallel to this, we're doing a BRINE, which probably fits more in your question line, Councillor. Okay?
Thank you. Sorry, CAO Merritt. Then Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. In reference to, I'm glad you're bringing up the creation of a tourism visitor inventory, because I just wanted to make a clear understanding. It's not up the town of Owls to create the tourism opportunities, but to support those companies and those events that do create tourism visitor opportunities. So I just want, is that my clear understanding?
Yes,
Thank
very close. Thank you.
Thank you, and CAO.
Yes, just to follow up on Councillor Thompson's comment in regards to business, specifically to COVID, we did that study a few months ago, and we presented to council in regards to how well businesses are perceiving they're doing, and a majority of them have come out of COVID in an okay situation, but a number of them were suffering either tremendously or crisis, so to speak. So our programs that we developed through COVID were really focused on getting money out, cash into the hands of those businesses that really were suffering. So our basically reopening program, the permitting, basically not having permitting fees charged, and especially for the restaurants and those that have the patios streamlined so they could get them up and running within days, let alone weeks or months. So we did tailor a lot of our programming around that business survey that we got to basically try to get money in the hands of the businesses as soon as possible. And So that'll be utilized too, and because I don't think COVID's going to end as far as in the next few months for the businesses that have suffered. They've lost revenue for a while, and we're going to have to basically be attentive to it, and hopefully through their secretariat, whether tourism or BRI, to basically give them the support they need, get the information in their hands that they can utilize to basically grow and thrive in this town.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion on the floor? Councillor Blatz.
Thank you to you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we accept Mr. Wright's tourism development report for information, and I thank you very much. I'm very impressed with this report, Larry. I think it's good. It's a good start or a good continuation of the work already been done. You know, kudos to you and your staff.
Yeah, we are going to do the BRINE in a similar project style, because we think we can translate that and transfer that knowledge to new staff coming in and to work with our other divisions and departments, okay? Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. We appreciate your presentation and all the work you're doing. Okay, we'll move along to number 5, business arising from the minutes. Is there any business arising?
Just
Mayor Michishka.
point of order, we haven't voted on the
Oh,
motion.
sorry. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Any business arising from the minutes? Or any unfinished business? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to 7, new business, and we'll go on to the strategic plan. Mayor Michishka?
Point of order, number 6, please.
Sorry, I'm looking too far down the agenda. Bylaws. So, CEO Merritt, could you go ahead and start?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, for the opportunity to deal with number 6. I know Mr. Christensen is here in the audience, who would be very disappointed if he could not speak to the items that were raised at the June Policy and Priorities meeting. So we did have a robust discussion at the June meeting. A number of things were resolved, but a number of items were still outstanding for Mr. Christensen to basically review and delve into. And since then, we basically looked at another item that in regards to electronic e-scooters, so to speak, and this has been raised in this latest edition of Eric's presentation. I'll ask Director Andrew if he has anything to say before we hand it off to Sergeant Christensen.
Thank you. Yes, just a matter of trying to do some housekeeping work with our community standards bylaw. Inevitably, when we made changes previously with the chicken bylaw, or urban chickens, I should say, it just creates some gaps and questions about certain terminology and things that come across the board. So that's what our attempt is, to try to tighten the document up and create a more enforceable and easily accessible document. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Christensen.
Thank you, Director Andrews. It's on. Deputy Mayor Ryan and Council and Mayor. So I have did the changes that we were talking about last P&P. So the new document you have in front of you, all the changes I've done, I've added and highlighted it, so it's easier for us to kind of get through it. So we'll start with the section 3.5, which is on the page 15 of amendments, which was the graffiti that we had spoken about. So I changed the wording, basically would change it to all graffiti to be removed within 72 hours. Oh, sorry, I forgot about that, sorry. Okay, thanks. So section 3.5, we changed the wording to say all graffiti shall be removed within 72 hours of becoming aware of the graffiti unless weather conditions are below 10 degrees Celsius or lower between the months of November 1st and April 30th. The property owner shall ensure that the reasonable steps are taken to minimize the duration and the visual impact of the graffiti placed on the property. Graffiti will be removed or temporarily covered within 72 hours, regardless of the time of year, if the graffiti is racist, derogatory, or discriminatory in nature. So the next one I added in was 3.22 was the ice rink noise exemption. And essentially, I added in that all private ice rinks must comply with the community standards bylaw hours Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. and Sunday on holidays 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So there would be no noise from ice rinks after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m. on weekdays and Saturday, and Sunday would be 10 a.m. And the ice rinks. I have done hours and hours and hours of research, and there is very little bylaws in regards to ice rinks and private backyard ice rinks. There's lots about, lakes and that type of stuff. However, one did pop up out of the blue, and that was Stony Plain, and so I used a little bit of what they had in there. And it basically says that no person shall construct a private ice rink on town property. Ice rinks must be at least 1 meter from property lines and boards no taller than 1 meter. Any boards higher than that would be built or would be considered a structure and would need a development permit and require that type of a permit. No person shall allow excessive noise from the rink as determined by section 3.22 of this bylaw. And no person shall install lights that are directed at any adjoining properties and or light that does not adversely affect adjacent sites. Section 5.22 is another amendment which is essentially talking about the e-scooters, and it's given a bit of a definition that what a scooter is. We didn't talk about e-bikes because e-bikes fall under the Traffic Safety Act, which have their own designation, so we need to essentially talk about the e-scooters. So a person shall not ride an e-scooter on any highway as defined by this bylaw, which is already in the bylaw, so it's not an amendment that way. If a rider has to cross the highway, they must use a crosswalk if available and must use muscular power. So if it's an electric one, they have to turn the motor off to cross the street or go down the sidewalk to move from one trail to another. This section does not apply to if the bicycle, not including e-bike, has a wheel diameter of 50 centimeters or less, if the sidewalk is designated as a path, which right now in the town of Olds, we don't have any sidewalks that are designated as a path or a bike trail. And section 5.23, a person shall not ride an e-scooter on any path unless the e-scooter has the following: must have at least a headlamp, but not more than 2 headlamps, at least 1 red tail light, 1 reflector mounted at the rear, must not ride on any path unless the e-scooter has a handbrake, and must not exceed 20 kilometers an hour on any path. And every person riding a bicycle, e-scooter, or e-bike on an approved or unapproved trail shall alert anyone that they're being overtaken by using a bell or horn in a reasonable amount of time. So with the e-scooters, I essentially amalgamated Edmonton and Calgary with their bylaws. Right now, both of them do not allow private e-scooters on any roadway or sidewalk, only on their bike trails or trails. Because they are, of course, as we had spoken last time, it is a prohibited vehicle on the roadway. And I apologize, section 24 to 32 is not supposed to be highlighted. I just noticed that when I was going through it. Other than that, everything else has stayed the same. I just added in the sections for the Schedule A for the fine amounts. And the other last one would be the vicious animal sign. We're still working on that, but basically it'll be designed as per council request not to have any pictures of any animals, and we'll follow the Town of Olds branding. So I'm just working with Monica right now on developing some type of a sign that will follow our branding. With that, I think that covers everything I changed based on council's request from last PMP. So I'm willing to take any questions and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Sorry, Councilor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Through you to Sergeant Christensen. With these e-scooters then, will we do some education through the schools in the fall, perhaps to enlighten students and maybe do some positive ticketing or something up until then, if we see or kids riding these scooters around, I happen to notice them more now. Recently, maybe it's because it was brought to my attention, but I do think that that would be a good route to go, is to tell kids that we accept them and they're, you know, as long as they're used properly. But I want to ensure we get some proper education out there for the young people. I don't want this to go into any kind of a negative spin. I think we can put a very positive spin on this.
Absolutely. My plan is to develop a little bit of a brochure as well, working with Morley at the schools, so that we can get that information out to the people. And I know myself and Officer Reed, we have stopped numerous people and we have educated them on, you know, they're not allowed to be on them. I'm also advising them that we are working on getting the bylaw so that we'll allow them on some of the trails throughout the town.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Just go to the CAO first.
Thank you, Deputy. I was just wondering if we could basically concentrate our discussions around e-scooters first, and then we can move on to graffiti, and then on to ice rinks, so we can basically have a good discussion on each one, and then make any adjustments that are necessary based on council's comments and decisions.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Councillor Bennett was yours. Okay. No? Councillor Harper?
So I just need clarification. Do most e-scooters already come equipped with headlamps, taillights, all of that equipment when you purchase an e-scooter? And that's for one question. And are you saying that no e-scooter should be on a sidewalk?
That is correct. So through the chair to yourself, most e-scooters I've seen, and I've done some research on them, come with the headlights and taillights on them already. As for, sorry, what was the second question?
Okay.
It's with
so-
regards to sidewalks.
I do know the
Oh,
question.
okay,
So
yes.
it's about the sidewalks. So they're not allowed to be on any sidewalk in the town of Wolds. So how do they get from point A to point B?
Muscular power. Because they are prohibited on the highways, they have to be pushed, or manually they can't use the electric motors.
Any other questions with regards to these scooters? Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Well, I mean, okay, we did have an inquiry about an e-scooter, so where were they e-scootering around when we started the whole process about these e-scooters? Were they on the road? Were they on the crosswalk, on the sidewalk? Where was this person that now all of a sudden they can't be on the sidewalk or on the road?
So the inquiry from the gentleman for the two children were on the trail by Imperial. I have stopped one person on the road, I've stopped one person on the sidewalk, and Officer Reed has stopped two, I think, on the road.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So these regulations that we're considering would be for the trails, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And currently, we have no areas in the community that are designated trails, according to this document, right?
No, they're allowed on all trails, just not on any sidewalk, unless that sidewalk is deemed part of a bicycle trail. We don't have any sidewalks that are deemed part of a trail. So you look at Edmonton or Calgary where they have bike paths, they would be allowed on those if it's a bike path.
Okay.
So they're allowed anywhere other than a road or a sidewalk.
Okay. So we do not have an extra step then to take in this conversation if this was to come forward.
So the issue is because they are prohibited, there's no insurance or registration on them, and if someone gets hit, then we have an issue if they're on the highway or on a roadway.
Thank you.
Councillor Harper.
Oh, just a clarification. So one of our cities, Edmonton or Calgary, I'm not sure which, does allow e-scooters on sidewalks, and the other one does not?
Yeah, so I can't remember which one's which. One allows them on the roads and one allows them on the sidewalk. The issue with both of those is that they have a provincial exemption that they have to be rented units. And in fact, Red Deer's looking at the same thing right now of having that same company come in, and they have special liability insurance, all that kind of stuff, and they get an exemption from the government, from the provincial government, to allow them on the roads or the sidewalks.
Director Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah, the one issue that we struggled with on this was the fact that the e-scooters are labeled the same as a golf cart or mini bikes, which were the mini motorcycles, and so all of them being prohibited on roadways really puts us up. You would think that the scooter on a sidewalk should be safe and fine, but because they're classified the same, it doesn't allow us that independence to pick and choose which one we follow. So there have been comments in different municipalities saying, well, nobody has any bylaw against you riding them on the road, when in fact it's actually that the municipality doesn't have the enforcement on the roadways with their program, being bylaw officers only as opposed to municipal enforcement. So there are mixed messages and stories coming from different locations on how these are applied and the rules governing them. And because they are relatively new and starting to pop up, there is some definite hiccups in this, and so we hope to at least establish a baseline to say, yes, we are welcoming and want them involved in our community with some basic guidelines. And then as Sergeant Christensen indicated, that if we look to designate sidewalks as part of our trail system, we want to make sure that we can incorporate that into the CSB so that it's all above board and clearly identified through mapping and public education as you requested through schools and or the trail system or social media, etc.
The other thing I'd just like to add to that is both Edmonton and Calgary, in order to use one of those e-scooters, you have to be over the age of 18. So they don't allow children on them unless they're on the trailways. Then they can have their designation as using their private e-scooters. Other than that, it's only rented ones. And in fact, I spoke with Red Deer, and they're actually doing the same bylaw as we speak, but going with the same process as Edmonton and Calgary with rented scooters and allowing them on the trailways.
Councillor Bennett, did you have your hand up? Okay. Before I get to Councillor Harper, I'm just going to make a comment, and as well as Councillor Thompson. Okay, so I do have a problem with this whole thing, and that is the fact that we're targeting e-scooters, but there's a lot of other items that people are riding that are not just e-scooters, that are electric. So we have those little hoverboard type things. I saw 2 little girls on the sidewalk on them just today. My neighbor has a Segway that he drives up and down the trail. Now, what are we going to do? Start regulating every single little thing in this town? It just seems like we're getting a little bit overboard. I think we should be tabling this until we get an idea from maybe provincial guidelines or something, or other communities, and seeing what they're doing. I don't have a problem with the scooters on the sidewalks and the trails. I don't want them on the road because they don't seem that there's much protection for them, and there's cars and motorcycles that can endanger their lives. But on a sidewalk, I don't see kids wanting to muscle power their little e-scooter over to the trail system to ride it. It just seems ridiculous to me, and I just think that we need to be able to say, you can go on the sidewalk to the trail and go ahead, but you can't go on the roadway. That's my comment. Councillor Harper first, and then Councillor Thompson.
So what I was going to suggest, I do agree that we need to use some common sense here. We can't over-regulate people so much that we're always referring to a bylaw. I do appreciate the work that's put into this, but we're going to have to get to the point where we're going to have to look at our sidewalk system and say, those are part of our trail system. Because it just does not make sense to have a 12-year-old kid pick up an e-scooter or push it down 5 blocks to get to a path. In East Olds, you don't have many paths. We're on sidewalks. So, I understand the reasoning behind this, but, you know, we need to go one step further before we pass this bylaw. So if we pass this bylaw or recommend for the passage today with the e-scooters, so are we going to have our bylaw enforcement? Are peace officers going out and ticketing people if they see them on sidewalks? They would have that ability. And I'm just not for this right now.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. That's what I was getting at too. Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. So my comments would be similar. I would suggest that when this initially came forward, it was we wanted to be able to enable people to use them in a way that was responsible, and so I would encourage us to take this just a step further as well, to afford people the opportunity to use different types of transportation in the community in a safe way, without creating a situation where we have to police it a whole bunch more. I wonder if, because it's under provincial regulation at this time, if this is something that can be left to the provincial folks to chase after if they choose. Could you answer that, Mr. Christensen?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Thompson. So right now, it is provincial. We are allowing them to go on, the law says that they're not allowed golf carts, pocket bikes, those kind of things are not allowed on any highway, which means back alleys, sidewalks, roadways, that type of stuff, unless, and e-scooters are private property, pocket bikes are private property, golf carts, because it's a golf club, you can have them on there because it's private property, but you can't, you know, run them down the road. So that's why we need to figure out how we want to go forward to make this so that we can use it. I think that we need to look at, if we're going to look at this, we need to look at our sidewalks, because that's where the issue comes in. As soon as they get on a sidewalk, they're illegal. And
Is it a supplemental or?
Yeah, it's supplemental. So I would encourage my fellow colleagues on council to allow the province to chase and regulate this if they choose at their expense and time. I value Mr. Christensen's time and think he could be spending it chasing other things.
Well, I think the problem is that they would not be allowed then on the sidewalks in town, and then it becomes even more problematic, and allowing these people that have these e-scooters to get to the trails. So I just think it doesn't make any sense not to allow them on the sidewalks in town to get to the trails, because as Councillor Harper and I both have pointed out, and I think Councillor Overwater sort of alluded to it as well, is that the problem is that these kids are not going to push these bikes over to a trail. And I just think it doesn't make sense. We have to have some common sense here. Councillor Bennett and then Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Through you to Mr. Christensen, when you stated that 18 years plus, we can have driver's licenses at 16, so that part makes no sense at all. And I know many people who are not going to Armstrong their little e-scooters across any darn sidewalk or any roadway. And is there not a way that we can produce our own bylaw that amends part of the provincial one? And no, I don't necessarily want to see you or Mr. Reid out chasing down e-scooters.
Definitely not. Mr. Christensen?
Yep, through yourself, to Councillor Bennett. I agree. I mean, we're kind of strong-armed by the provincial law, so I mean, it's not saying that I can't look into how we can make this work. Edmonton and Calgary, they got the exemptions, but based on what they have, and that was the rented units, and you had to be over 18, there's liability, there's a certain speed, it's that type of stuff. When I read the bylaws, both of them were identical, and again, like I said, Red Deer is doing exactly the same thing as Edmonton and Calgary, only allowing them on their trailways, not on any sidewalks or roadways, unless they have a rented one.
Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Well, I'm going to go back to my original comment about education, and that's part of why I brought this all up, so that we make sure that these kids are educated in what we have to do or what we don't have to do. But I kind of concur at this moment that I think we need to really reevaluate this whole situation. And it is summertime, kids have been in lockdown, kids have been learning online, they haven't been able to participate in any sports, they haven't been able to go anywhere. Most of them haven't even seen grandparents for a very long time. So I don't want to start, dictating is a harsh word, but I really don't want to start over policing a little bit of freedoms these kids have. And I, as you know, I mean, I walk many of the trails daily, and I have yet to see an issue with any of these situations, bikes or anything else, you know. So I think that education, and as soon as we can get stuff, you know, information out, and maybe over the summer as we see them, yourself and Mr. Reed can be educating kids as to, you know, our hands are kind of tied here, or whatever has to happen. But I think at this point in time, I don't really want to see this bylaw go through, but I really do believe we need to really further push this education.
Member Žižka.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. Yeah, I'm of the mindset that because it's a motorized vehicle, we do need to regulate it somewhat. I understand the Calgary and Edmonton bylaw being 18 instead of 16 with the driver's license, because an 18-year-old can't rent a car. You have to be 25 years old in the province of Alberta to rent a car. So I can see how that rental thing there is. If it would be possible for individuals to get insurance on these things, then that may alleviate it. Maybe that needs to be the standard, and then we allow them on the sidewalks as well as the trail system, or we designate our sidewalks as trail system, or however we get to do that. But yeah, I don't want to take away fun for the kids and activities and outdoor activities, but at the same time, being a motorized vehicle, I think we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't regulate them somehow, some way.
I just have a quick question. Sergeant Christensen, if we designate our sidewalks as trails, would that get around this problem?
That I would have to speak with the administration. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bennett?
I'm curious what the speed is on these. Are they like turbocharged, that the province is sort of afraid of them hitting people, I guess, or animals or something, yes?
Well, so again, it comes down to, because they're a motorized vehicle, they can't be insured or registered. So there's a liability issue. There's a doctor that rides his up 57th, and he probably is doing about 50K. Yeah. I've never been able to get him on radar because I've always not been in my vehicle when he went by me, but I know he was actually passing traffic, so.
Oh, okay, well, good to know, thank you.
So.
Director Andrew?
Yeah, the one thing I would like to just mention in this is that actually the creation or the modification of this bylaw is actually speaking towards allowing the e-scooters on our trail system, which currently has no mention. The relation of the operating on a street or a sidewalk is already prohibited as per the province, so we're not actually limiting use of these by passing this bylaw. It is actually giving an endorsement to put them in place, because that's the one area right now with no mention in any community standard bylaw. We have no regulation. So if there was somebody that whizzed past and knocked somebody down, or did all of those things that we don't want to see to the citizens, we have no ability to modify that behavior or address it whatsoever. So the piece of enabling this is saying we do endorse this in the community on our trail system, and then if we want to take this further to investigate the legal liabilities or requirements for us to seek an exemption or whatever to allow them on sidewalks, or if we can designate our sidewalks as part of the trail, we can investigate that further and absolutely bring that forward to incorporate further into this or through traffic enforcement. Again, the one piece, right now, and Sergeant Christensen will correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been no enforcement activities surrounding use of them on the roadways, resulting in a ticket. It's education, as a lot of our other things. So again, you know, anytime that something's implemented, there's a time frame where you educate people and inform the public, as opposed to, you know, attack with ticketing. That's the last resort when the change of behavior is not achieved. So I believe that, you know, in this process it would be the same thing, but I just wanted to bring that up for clarity, that, like I say, this bylaw does endorse the use of them in the community, at least on the portion that we can control today.
Thank you for that clarification, Director Andrew. And I think it does go back to what Councillor Blatt said with regards to education, and the fact that I think a lot of people who have these e-scooters don't realize that they shouldn't be on the road or shouldn't be on the sidewalks. So that word needs to get out to educate. And then and us allowing them on the trails would be helpful for them, and once they realize that that's the case. Also, I don't think that this addresses the other two items that I mentioned with the Segway. I don't know where that falls, and the little two-wheel hoverboard. I think they're called hoverboards. That I saw two little little girls, like there were probably 7 of them on the sidewalk. So what, you know, how does that fall in? Are they part of this whole area too?
So through yourself, they are prohibited as well under the Traffic Safety Act. Yeah. Same with the one with the wide wheel, the balance board with the big wide wheel that's electric. It's prohibited. Golf carts are prohibited. Those little gas pocket bikes and electric ones are prohibited.
Well, I think it goes back to Councillor Thompson said with regards to the province needing to really take a look at this, because you shouldn't be lumping golf carts in with the little hoverboards. I think those are like toys, they're not transportation. So are there any other questions with regard to e-scooters or any direction that we need to provide right at this moment? Councillor Overwater and Councillor Harper.
Well, I didn't realize there was so many little electrical things that are out there. And, okay, the e-scooter, and part of my ignorance, that's the one where you used to sort of use one leg and you would push, and now it's electric, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And
Sorry, but, well, I think I know what it is. I mean, they used to just be man-powered, and now they're little man-powered and a little electric, right?
And I have to apologize because I missed putting in the definition, and essentially it's stand-up. You can only
Okay.
stand up on it, you can't ride it.
Got it. Okay, so those things don't go, how fast do those things go?
They'll do anywhere from 20 up to 50. Like I said, that one doctor that drives up on 57th all day, he's 50 kilometers an hour at least. That's why, like, even the ones in Edmonton and Calgary are governed out at 20 kilometers, 18 kilometers an hour.
Well, I hope he at least wears a helmet.
He does. We would have a different conversation with him as well.
CEO Merritt.
Yeah, I don't want to get into individuals because that's not right to speak to that. But if we don't pass this bylaw, then it's prohibited for them to be used on pathways, which is not really where council wants to be. I guess if we designated our sidewalks as pathways, that would get the balance that people are looking for. And what we would need to do in the next little bit is to see if there's unintended consequences of making that change, because that wasn't part of what we brought here today. So I do think we have to look into that aspect and bring it back as quickly as possible. But if we don't pass this bylaw, my understanding is what people are doing is going to continue to be illegal. And so if we pass it, at least we make the pathways acceptable.
Sounds good. Thank you, CEO Merritt. Councillor Harper, did you have a question to?
Actually, I was just going to bring that up, that we just need to see what the consequences are if we designate all of our sidewalks as trails.
Exactly.
So I think that's where we move forward too, in reference to this portion of the changes. And then I have questions about the other portions that are recommendations.
Okay, thank you. I think we can move along then to, if everybody's okay with that, we will allow this to happen on our trails. CEO?
Eric, are you good with where
I'm
we're
good
heading
with
with
that.
this? So, okay,
Yeah, we
great.
can, and then if we have to bring it back later, then we can always at least allow them to use them on trails for now. And you guys all know me, I'm all about education, and we will make up pamphlets and hand them out, social media, and go work through Morley at the school.
Councillor Overwater?
Okay, you just said trails, but that also means sidewalks?
Not
No,
yet.
we're not doing the sidewalks yet.
No. We have to find out the ramifications of that.
Okay, well, I mean, really, by the time we get this all passed, summer's gonna be over. I'm just saying.
Not necessarily. This is only for information today. It's a PMP session, so we'll look into it in the next few days perhaps before we, maybe we can have something for next week.
Okay, well, we'll move along to then, how about the graffiti? It might be a quicker item to discuss, hopefully. Are there any questions with regards to the change for the graffiti? Councillor Blatz?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see how this is written, particularly during the winter hours, and also graffiti should be covered if it is racist, derogatory, or discriminatory within 72 hours. But I just want to remind everyone that we've had some pretty stiff winds lately, and I don't know how you think some types of business owners are going to be able to secure some type of a temporary covering, you know, and have it last. So I think we're going to have to always be cognizant of that. And as always, all of our bylaws are flowing documents, so we're fluid documents. So, you know, I guess we'll have to work with it. But I think it's because you can't expect business owners to start drilling holes in the side of their buildings to try and cover graffiti. You know, that's going to become unsightly in itself too. So it could be interesting to see how this might work out.
So through the chair to yourself, and essentially, I mean, we need to have something in writing, so, but it's our discretion once we kind of get through there and work with the businesses. I mean, we have in the past and we always will, and as well with the residents, so.
And that's very true, and most of our businesses have been very appreciative of the work that you have done with them for certain.
Councillor Harper?
Just a question in reference to the first line, because I think it might be covered in another part of the section in reference to graffiti. You say all graffiti shall be removed within 72 hours. By who? By who?
It's by the property owner.
Does it say that somewhere else?
Believe it says it in the definitions. I'd have to look
Okay,
off
thank
the
you.
top of my
I
head.
just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Good pointing that out, because I was going to say that too. So if it's not somewhere else, Sergeant Christensen, can we make sure that it's in there?
Yes.
Any other questions with regards to the graffiti? Okay, I did have a concern as well with what Councillor Blatz brought up in the same light. So, you know, we say will, that might be a little harsh word, or maybe we should be saying should, and that would give a leeway at all?
No,
Because of the fact that maybe, again, high winds, bad weather, other things could prevent that from happening. So if we say will, then we're saying you have to do it, and or do you think that that's a flexible enough word?
To yourself, I believe that would need to say will, because should means that, well, maybe you can do it, maybe you won't do it. It's, the should is we need to have it as will.
All right. Councillor Overwater?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I believe it's correct there where, because we're talking about racist, derogatory, discriminatory. I want that as will, you will cover that up basically immediately. Because I think the other stuff we can deal with, but that needs to be covered. I think it has to be covered.
I agree with that. My concern was the same as Councillor Blatz, and the fact that, you know, if you have, how are you going to do it if it's in the dead of winter at -40 and you have high winds, and how would they cover that up, especially if it was up high or something? You know, tarps are just not going to cut it in that case. You might not be able to do that within 72 hours, and we could have a different bylaw enforcement officer out there who might be a little hard-nosed and say, okay, well, you're getting a ticket, you know, rather than being like our officers are and working with people. So something further down the line, somebody could interpret it differently, that's all I'm saying. Councillor Harper? And
Thank you very much. I believe that our community standards bylaw is once again, common sense needs to prevail. We do have words in this document that says will or should, but always common sense should prevail, both with our citizens and our staff. So I am with Councillor Overwater on this. If it's something in those areas of racist, derogatory, or discriminatory, we want it removed or covered up within 72 hours. We know our Alberta weather changes. It could be 40 below one day and 40 above the next day. We could have Chinook winds and then we could have dead calm. So we have to work with that and use common sense.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Harper. I'm just saying some people don't have that. Director Andrew?
Definition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in further with this, things to keep in mind that we are going to work on as an information pamphlet for our business owners and community as a whole on dealing with graffiti through Sergeant Christensen's previous work and partnerships, is that we will provide options and information for people to utilize that sometimes to eliminate the racist or derogatory, discriminatory messages that might be left, is that it actually isn't removal, it's cover. So simply a small amount of extra paint can cover up an image or words that now is not one of those three. And so it's counterintuitive to add more paint to a bad problem, but it's the quickest and easiest. And, you know, the wording inside is not that you're restoring the building to the original condition or that it has to look pretty. It just takes away those hateful type imaging. And so we are working to identify products that can be utilized throughout the year based in cold weather, even on a temporary basis. We're also continuing to investigate devices that are utilized in other areas that are developing as removal. One such device is an aerated device that shoots dry ice pellets and will remove paint and substances without doing further damage. And so we're investigating that. It takes a little time to look at costing and then look at partnerships potentially where maybe there's partnership through the community, through maybe the chamber or something like that, where a device can be purchased locally to be utilized by people or rented out, or any kind of a partnership that we could create where there's mutual benefits and minimizing cost and disruption to everybody. So those are the pieces that are taking time that go further than this, but at least if we have a clear definition in our bylaw to address the immediate concern with education and intent of good nature of dealing with these situations, I think we're going to win, because again, there's always the what ifs, but if we take a hard line in our bylaw, it makes it very difficult for our enforcement officers to make exceptions and work with people. But if there's intent, that carries a long way with any of our enforcement type activities. Is if you show a demonstrated desire to comply, we will give you all of the efforts and, you know, courtesies and common sense that will apply to that.
Thank you, Director Andrew, and that was common sense. All right, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the ice rinks. Councillor Bennett first.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree that we need outdoor rinks, especially COVID certainly proved that. But most communities have at least one rink that is maintained and has lights. So one of our citizens nicely suggested that in the newspaper and wondered, of course, that's probably a service level review question. However, I think that it's something that we should be discussing.
Well, thank you. Mayor Majewska?
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. Yeah, very much agree with Councillor Bennett. It's probably high time that we provide that service on a regular basis, and everybody can count on it, knowing year to year what we're going to do. So it's definitely a service level and a budgetary thing that we need to discuss. We appreciate the fire department springing to action last year with COVID and everything, and putting out some temporary things, but should maybe look at proper lighting and proper boards and things like that. As far as the proposed changes to the community standards bylaw, I certainly appreciate the effort that you put in, Sergeant Christensen, and I would wholeheartedly back the definitions of hours. But that would probably be the end of my support for any more regulations with regards to backdoor rinks, personal backyard rinks. So I'm happy to keep in the hours of noise and scrap the rest. But that's my personal opinion, and that's probably the way I'll vote when it comes to a regular council meeting.
Thank you. Director Wagstaff, you had your finger up there.
I did. It's not in relation to the CSP, but in relation to the comment about the lights in the parks. That is a service level piece for council. To this point in time, our service level within the parks has been that lighting was to be guiding lights for reference points, and that park use was dawn till dusk, and we weren't lighting the pathways. We were just providing reference points that would get you from one light to the next. So that would be an adjustment in service level, of course, with the cost of putting lighting throughout the network.
Thank you. I'm not sure what that had to do with the outdoor rink.
I think Councillor Bennett was referring to a letter that referenced lighting both on the rinks and in the parks.
Okay. Did you want to respond to that, Councillor Bennett, or should I go on to Councillor Harper and then?
I would like to respond. I understand what you're saying, but I think it's high time, it's 2021, that we discuss this. Of course, it's service level review and budgetary items, but when most communities have lighted and sometimes attended outdoor rinks for use, we are behind the times, and we need to get up to speed.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Or CEO Merritt.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy with Director Linderman to bring back a business case, what a expanded rink would look like. We were proposing a number for this year, but the basics, so absolutely will cost at what one would be, and then you can extrapolate that by the number.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much. I will just refer to the recommended amendments for outdoor backyard rinks. So I'm going to go back to common sense. So it says that any boards higher than 1.0 meters, which is 39 inches, a sheet of plywood is 4 feet by 8 feet. It doesn't make sense to have somebody buy a 4 by 8 sheet of plywood and have to cut it to 39 inches. Let's use some common sense here and either go 2 feet or 4 feet, whatever that converts to in metric. That's all I'm saying. And I do agree that it's time that we looked at one more outdoor rink that has the boards on it. I don't necessarily say that we have to have it lit. Kids use it in the dark.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Yes, the time schedule I can probably live with. I hope the complainant can live with that as well. I mean, that's why it's here, is because we did have a huge complaint and an issue regarding the noise. And the noise is really what the problem was. It wasn't having a backyard rink. It was just the noise of pounding the puck against the ice to the board. And I am against anybody infringing on my own piece of quality of life And I believe that's something that we all need to take into consideration, is that your little house that you have with your yard is your quality of life. And if somebody's infringing on that, then somehow we have to be able to enforce it. So you've got something here with the timeline saying that you're going to enforce that. So that's fine. I am in favor of us doing a service level review of having, I think we should have 2 outdoor rinks that are lit, one on the north side and one on the south side for sure. I think that's very important. As we found out, everybody really likes to have those outdoor rinks, and thank you to the fire department for trying to get us 8. But anyways, I think if we could put that in the service level review as part of our recreation, I think that's very important. We want kids outside playing. We don't want them sitting there with moving their fingers. Their fingers are in very good shape. That's what's in shape with a lot of kids. So I can go with the time slot. You have provisions for noise. So as Councillor Harper said, you either got to make it 2 feet or 4 feet. You can't do 39. That just does not make sense.
Thank you. Mayor Majewska.
Thank you very much, and I agree that maybe we should be looking at 2, one in the north, one in the south. I think if the residents of Olds could count on 1 or 2 town-funded outdoor public rinks, then it may alleviate a bit of this backdoor rink. Maybe people won't feel it is hugely necessary to be in their back yard and disturbing the neighbors, whereas if, you know, we pick Centennial Park or a couple of the other parks where there's typically noise with children at play anyway, those residents that border that are already accustomed to it in the summer, then that'll alleviate some of these backdoor rinks, and people won't be in a big rush to make their own in their own backyard.
Thank you. Councillor Batts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Okay, I'm totally in favor of the hours, the noise bylaw and such, and I agree, if we're going to allow them in backyards, either 2 or 4 feet would probably be more logical or common sense, as Councillor Harper keeps saying. But I want to remind everybody that we did have one complaint, and it was a very lengthy discussion. But I've also had several residents who have complimented the fact that people are getting outside and doing things and enjoying the noise, and you know, they were in the same neighborhood, and they were all very, very happy and pleased with it, and it was a lot of children participated. So I think that I would be okay with this if we did either 2 or 4 feet, and I also concur that I would like to see us look at definitely an outdoor rink, that, or at least 2. Would that have lights? And I agree, Centennial Park's an ideal location. So, and it could be during these same hours as well, lit during, you know, or lit in winter months until 10 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor Batts. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I concur with most things. I think common sense would say it's 4 feet. 2 feet isn't quite large enough, and we live half the year in the dark. It would be nice for people to be able to skate in the light, and let's make sure if we add more rinks, we add lighting and do it properly.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I agree. We need to have lights. Don't want to be skating into the dark. All right. Any other comments or questions for Sergeant Christensen? Councillor Overwater.
Well, I thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I think we sort of need to come to some sort of consensus for Sergeant Christensen. Is it 2 feet or 4 feet? Do we want to get rid of some other things in here? We need to give some sort of direction as to what we're saying. So I'm fine with the hours of operation, but we need to come to some sort of, what would we like to see, 2 feet or 4 feet? I know we're not making a decision today. However, it would be good to have some sort of, you know, definition or something for Sergeant Christensen.
Well, thank you. Actually, I don't know why we're quibbling over the 2 feet or 4 feet, because it says any boards higher than the 1 meter. So that doesn't say you have to build at 1 meter. It's saying anything higher it would be considered a development permit. So we're not telling people how big to develop it. So if we want to make it 4 feet, then we would just change it from the 1 meter to the, whatever 4 feet is, 1.5, not even that. So I guess maybe we should go around the table and go through each one and see what people think, and then we can give Sergeant Christensen an idea of what to bring back for council for the bylaw, and we wouldn't have to have as heavy a discussion then. So let's talk about hours. Is there anybody opposed maybe to the hours that Sergeant Christensen have? Okay, everything's good for the hours. On town, constructing a private rink on town property, that's just a no-brainer if you ask me. But is anybody opposed to that idea? Okay. Rinks must be at least 1 meter from the property lines and no boards no taller than 1 meter. So this is where we come in with the 1 meter at this point, with the height of the boards. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I agree. It's 39 inches is 1 meter, and anything above that. But bear in mind, if we're going to stick it at 1 meter, they're going to have to come back and get a development permit, which is going to be a cost, plus the cost of lumber. And we all know right now, the cost of lumber is not exactly cheap. So I would rather stick to 2 or 4 feet and leave it at that, because I don't want to see any more additional cost to our taxpayers for them allowing their children to have fun in the backyard. That's just my 4 feet worth.
Councillor Overwater.
I think we need to decide, is it 4 feet? Are we liking 4 feet, or are we liking 2 feet? Not 2 or 4. It's up to 4 feet, and after that, then you have to have a building permit, because that's when the cost comes in. Because let's face it, nobody's going to come along and cut the 4x8 down to 39 inches. That'd be enough to send you. So I'm thinking we either got to go 4, up to 4 feet, and after that, then you need a building permit.
Okay, anybody else with regards to that? Again, I'm saying to you guys that it's up to 1 meter, and then somebody can build it at 36 inches if they wanted to, right? So we're saying something over the 1 meter. We're not telling people you have to cut it at 1 meter. We're saying up to the 1 meter.
But we're saying up to 4 feet.
4 feet is pretty tall. That's pretty tall. And we had people complaining about the pucks going on the boards. 4 feet is pretty tall. CEO Merritt.
I have to agree with Councillor Overwater. We have to decide, because a meter is 3 feet 3 inches, so it's another 9 inches more. And if it's in fact the sheet of plywood is 4 feet, then that would be the reasonable number to utilize, saying that's the standard measurement for these types of boards. Because it's 9 inches, that's the big difference between
Right,
those two.
so do we want it at 2 feet, or do we want 4 feet? And the problem was, with the complaint, was the big slap shot. And if you have it less than 4 feet or 3 feet, I guess, you're probably not going to get the big slap shot, because the big slap shot goes wherever. It's not directed low towards the net. So if you had it at 2 feet, that's the height. You can't go any higher. That's it. We need to make a decision on that.
Mayor Majewski, I'm going to ask you your expert opinion, being a hockey player. What is the slap shot? Well, you're the only one who's playing hockey here at this point.
Well, 4 feet is the height of the net, or 5 feet's the height of the net. So 4 foot boards is typically, there's always a screen or glass behind above the 4 foot board, or the 4 foot board. I'm of the mind not to regulate that. I don't want to see a whole bunch of regulations, period. That was never ever my intent. I think if you want to build an outdoor rink, as long as it's decent looking, it's not a huge eyesore, They should be able to make the boards as high as they want, but then we get into the development permit aspect of it. So if we regulate it to 4 feet, which is, again, Councillor Harper's common sense thing, which a piece of plywood is 4 feet wide. So I would be happy with 4 feet and not having to take out a development permit for outdoor rink boards only. Anything else that's built over what is it, 1 meter, then you need a development permit. So any other structure, then they need a development permit.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Again, I'm okay with the noise, and you know what? I think the reason why we had the complaint that we had this past year was more to do with COVID in the whole scheme of things, because hockey wasn't being allowed, and there were more semi-professionals, I guess you would say, home practicing. So, I mean, I guess we could just leave it with the hours, and then at the end of the day, next year, take a look at it again, see where we're at with that, and not have a restriction on the height of the board.
Well, I'm good with that. I didn't want to have the height restriction on the boards. I think that the only thing we need to really do is the hours that we talked about and the lights, because I don't think we should have lights going and tilting them into people's property. I don't think they would anyway, but at least it would be there. Have some kind of a rule with regards to lighting, just so that we're not bothering all the neighbors with lights streaming all over the place. But other than that, I wouldn't even bother putting anything else in. Okay, who's next? Councillor Thompson, I think you were, and then Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. So we already have standards for how large fences can be built. This is another type of fence, right? Pretty much. So I would like to see us maintain that ability to build a fence, an ice board, up to that 6 feet. And I'd be prepared to make a motion on this whole discussion when you're ready.
Okay, we'll table that for a minute and just move on to Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I would suggest that under 4.25, that we put a period at the end of all property lines, period. Eliminate the words "and boards no taller than whatever, 1 meter." We eliminate 4.26 altogether and leave the rest in. Because I think then we would have a chance to evaluate what happens next year. And I believe that by putting those items in, will eliminate some of the noise and other issues caused that were created last year.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. Any other comments? Councillor Blatz.
So are you also suggesting then that we would remove 4.26? Okay, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Everybody seems to be good with that? Okay, so now you have some direction.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay. So, Councillor Thompson, now you would be making a motion that would include not just the rinks, but all of the information that we have in front of us.
Yes, yes, Your Worship. If you'd feel free to help me here, but I feel like I'm there. I would like to move that we accept a bylaw 2021-09 CSB 2018-05 amendment as information and direct administration to bring back the amendment to a future council meeting with further information regarding the use of scooters on, e-scooters on sidewalks, allowing rink boards to be built to the height of 6 feet, removing 4.26.
No, I think we were not limiting the boards. I think we were just changing the 4.25 to period at the end of the property lines and then just taking that board out. We already have that. We don't need to tell people how high they should build the boards because we already have that
Sure.
for fencing involved. So we don't need that. And then eliminating 4.26. And not mention the boards at all, the heights.
I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yep. Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. All right, is that clear for everybody? All right, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Sergeant Christensen.
Yes, I'd like to thank Sergeant Christensen, too, for all the research he's done on all these topics. It's been pretty extensive, and it was truly appreciated.
You bet. Okay, we'll move along to now new business. Item 7A, Council Strategic Plan, and would you like to introduce CO?
Thank you very much, Deputy, and I would like to introduce Kelly Lloyd to give an update. Kelly is our Coordinator of Strategic Affairs, so Kelly, give us an update on our strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Chair Ryan, members of council and administration. So before you have the latest update on your strategic plan. Last update was February of this year, just prior to service level review. And as been noted to council, we will be presenting a strategic plan update twice a year. So July, the latest one prior to the election. The next one is going to be in December after the election. And so here we have under good governance, you'll notice that the updates for your strategic plan are notified in red. So there have been some increases in some numbers. Some numbers you may see haven't changed from the last time, and that's because we have them measured on an annual basis, and we just don't have the right time to introduce those. So yes, I would imagine that everyone is taking a look at the updates in red that you have there, and I just would like to reflect to council that you have accomplished a lot of things in the last almost 4 years of your term, and that council should be extremely proud of what has been accomplished. And I really have nothing further to say about the update, as the updates are in red. So I will take questions, though, if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. We appreciate the update on this plan here, and yeah, I'll take questions from anybody. Councillor Everwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I just have a comment. I'm looking at page 67, 6.2 with our 23 public engagements. I think that's phenomenal. I think we do a great job with our public engagements. Our staff compiles all the information very well for us, and I'm not too sure how many other communities actually do as well with the public engagements as what our staff does. So kudos to you guys, and thank you for doing that, because I know it's a wealth of information for us when we're reading all that stuff. So thank you.
And if I may, Chair Ryan, just add to that. So that not only includes some of the things that you see in front of you,
Yeah.
but it also includes your municipal development plan. So it's planning and development as well.
Yep.
And so, yes, very holistic view.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. Councillor Bennett.
I want to thank administration for all their work, because we get to say yay or nay mostly, and administration and staff have done a yeoman's job of this, and we appreciate and are grateful for the time that's inputted and all of the stress that it probably incurs. So thank you to everyone for their hard work. Thank you.
Well put. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I too want to say thank you to everyone. This is a great document. I'm very proud of the work that the staff and administration have done for us, and the work that we've done as a council. I think we all deserve a good, well-deserved pat on the back, and I'm assuming that this will be on the webpage as well. Perfect. Thank you so much. I think it's a good document that everybody could just have a quick view at and see what we actually all do up here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blatz, for that comment. Councillor Harper.
I too want to say thank you, and often we can't see the forest for the trees. And this document allows us to be able to say, we can see the forest that's happened over 4 years. So thank you very much to all of our staff.
Thank you, Councillor Harbour. I'll take a motion. Thank you, Member Shishka.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. I move that we accept for information the update on the council strategic plan, and I too will thank administration. And just for an analogy for people to understand what you see in the debate here and the work that council does in public, the administration and staff and teams, it's like an iceberg. You see maybe 10% of the effort that goes into this document and all of the policies and so forth that go into this. So we appreciate all the work that the administration has done for this. Thank you.
Well said, Member Shishka, and thank you, Ms. Lloyd. We really appreciate everything you do. Okay, we'll move along to item number 7B. Oh, sorry. We had a motion. We need a motion on the floor. Oh, you moved it. Okay. All right. I wasn't sure if there was a motion in between that. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All in favor? And motion. Okay, we'll move on to 7B, Council Policy 108C, and that is civic recognition. CEO Merritt.
Thank you, Deputy, and I'll ask Ms. Lloyd to stay at the podium, and she can introduce the changes that were made to this policy.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. Again, through the chair, presenting in front of you is Council Policy 108, Civic Recognition. This policy has very slight revisions to it. As we were working through the procedure side of civic recognition policy, there were a few changes that were noted. And so you have them in front of you. One is the definition of an appropriate gift. Administration has determined that an appropriate gift will depend on the event and will be populated from the promotional inventory. Just as housekeeping at the bottom, and ensuring that the request on page 2, upon request, the criteria has been met, ensuring that identifying that the criteria must be met to receive a request. And then just again, housekeeping, appropriate gift capitalized. And again, these changes came about through the review of our procedure and felt that they were quite appropriate and needed to be in the council policy.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. Appreciate that. Any questions? Councillor Harbour?
I have 2 questions. So
We'll ask one, and then we'll see if anybody else has one.
I'm smiling over this. So how many congratulatory certificates has our mayor signed in the last 4 years congratulating people on reaching their 65th birthday? Any? So why do we have it here? Well, you can get one this year, Jamie. So I'm just asking, why do we have it here?
Yeah.
We could maybe change that.
First off, we have Legislative Clerk Marcy McKinnon.
Thank you, through the chair. We have it there because 65 is a milestone for many people. The mayor has signed a letter in my tenure while I have been here, at least for 65 twice. It might have been the former mayor. However, majority are elderly ages past 65 on average, and mostly anniversaries as well. Thank you.
Member Shishka?
Yeah, and I don't think it was me in the 65, but I have done 75s and 85s. There's one example of this in our term here, where we did a recognition, and it wasn't out of the ordinary, too far out of the ordinary. And then about 2 months later, I noticed at the funeral directions that that particular person had passed away. So obviously, it looked like that they knew that they had problems and were going to pass and wanted one last big birthday, and not that it wasn't 100, it was a lesser number. But, so there's incidents like that where maybe a 65-year-old has a terminal illness and wants a big blowout and a signature from the town. So I'd be more than happy to sign anything like that.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. You know what, 65 is a milestone. You can apply for your CPP. I mean, yes, you can apply for it earlier. Yes, people are living longer, but you know what? Sorry, Mayor Michael, I want a big blowout for my 65th with not saying I'm going to be dropping dead in a few more years. So at the end of the day, I expect a letter from whoever is sitting in that chair.
If I'm here, I swear I'll sign it.
Well done. Councilor Platts.
Thank you, and perhaps maybe people don't recognize that we do this at the town level. Maybe people haven't applied for this particular document because they weren't aware that it is available, and hopefully maybe we can get some information out there so people do know, and maybe we'll see much or many more of these documents being signed by the mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Harper.
And don't get me wrong, I think it's great, but I think Councillor Platts has hit the nail on the head. We don't let people know that, so I think we need to do that. No, I didn't get a letter. I'm hurt. So I need to know about these things. There is one other question, more serious.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Not that the age isn't serious, because it is. I just wanted to say that. It says, council and or administration shall not recognize matters that are of religious nature. But do we recognize our churches that are established in our community for their anniversaries? For example, like St. John's Anglican Church, they had their 100th anniversary. Would that not be a milestone? And are we not allowed to recognize that? Just a question.
Legislative Clerk.
Thank you. I'll try to answer that. We wouldn't, I personally would encourage and believe that the will of council would be to celebrate the anniversary, not the religion, right? So I think if it was a celebration of 100 year of that church being in our town, then absolutely we would do a certificate, but I don't believe that we would promote the religion itself.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion? Councilor Platts.
Thank you. I move that we accept for information policy 108C, civic recognition for information.
Thank you.
Bring it back to at a future council date, pardon me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. We'll move along to 7C then, Council Policy 205C, Rules of Flying Flags. CEO Merritt.
Thank you, Deputy, and I'm going to ask Ms. Lloyd to speak to this policy as well. Ms. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. So yes, Policy 205, Flying of Flags, the rules for. Again, upon review of the procedure, moving through the process that we've been doing, identified were a very minute changes to the policy, but we needed to bring the policy forward to you prior to the, for the approval of it. So the approval piece that we are going to be looking for is a revision found on page 77. I have it up in front of you. 7B outlines upon the death of a Town of Olds employee. And we have struck out while performing work for the Town of Olds. It was felt by administration that that should transpire. The other change to this would be under 8C, an active service member of an emergency service. Administration felt that it should also reflect or former. We have former fighting individuals who have passed, and this will incorporate the recognition of them as well. And I believe that's all there was for the policy.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. Councilor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'm just prepared to make a motion. I don't have any discussion.
Okay, let me just see if there's questions. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Ryan. I wonder if staff have looked at the protocol for our First Nations and Métis communities. In reading through the policy there is no reference, and as we're all treaty people, on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy and the Métis Nation of Alberta. I wonder if we might add that protocol to our flag raising protocol before we accept a motion to move forward with this.
That's a good point. Ms. Lloyd?
So thank you, Councillor Thompson, for that question. I know administration has had discussions, especially since council has become a welcoming and inclusive community, that flag protocol is part of what we want to move forward with. It is the prerogative of council to take a look. If you want to have research and have something put into policy sooner rather than later, it is something that we as administration can definitely do.
CAO Merritt?
Thank you very much for that, Kelly. I agree. I would like for this to pass, or at least bring back to the next council meeting, and then we will certainly, if council gives us direction to do that research, I think we've done some already. So that would be great, and we'll bring it back when we have that information. But I do want to recognize, if there's a chance that we have to recognize anybody here with these minor changes, that would be good too. So I think we can do both, accomplish both.
Director Wright staff?
And further to what the CEO has said, there has been some research done into this. It was part of the plan, and I don't recall the year, but I know it was in the next term, for the Welcoming and Inclusive Communities plan that was presented to council, did include exploring flags and the protocols around flags. That was one of the steps in, it was, I believe, set so it would be in the 2022 to 2026 term that would be explored.
Yes, and I believe we had a discussion with regards to the Indigenous flags and which ones we were going to fly, because there was some dispute over which one was relevant and which one we weren't quite sure which ones, and so there was going to be some kind of review of that. Director LaRocque, do you have anything on that at all?
No, I'm sorry, I don't right now.
Okay, I think Michelle was looking into that. Was she not, CEO?
No, I think just to reflect what Director Wagstaff, Michelle and others have been looking into this, and it was part of our plan to go forward basis, so we can certainly look at the timing of it again. But I would suggest that we pass, at least bring this back for the adjustments, and then we will certainly be bringing back the discussion that Councillor Thompson had requested us to do. I think we've got that direction.
All right, super. Okay, thank you. And Councilor Overwater, would you like to make that motion then?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I think Councillor Thompson can go ahead and make the motion, since he's got some changes.
Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I would move to accept this as information and direct administration to bring this policy back with details about how we might also include First Nations, Métis, and Inuit flags.
Councilor Harper?
So I would recommend that we don't accept Councillor Thompson's motion, because what we would like to do right now is accept this for information, direct this particular policy to come back to council at its next council meeting, so at least we have a protocol in place for employees. We did experience that situation just last year. And then actually ask our administration to investigate for further, they can make changes to the present policy down the road. Does that make sense, Councillor Thompson?
So it sounds like we need two motions here, actually, and I absolutely would honor that. So I will withdraw my previous motion.
Point of order, just split your motion.
Okay, that works.
Thanks.
Okay. So I would move that we accept for information the, sorry, I'll pull up the, sorry, what's the?
That's policy 205C.
205C, and direct administration to bring that back to a future council meeting.
Thank you. All in favor? And that motion's passed. Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. We would do another motion then, Councillor Thompson, with regards to what you were looking at before.
I would further make a motion directing administration to bring back flag protocol for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit flag raising.
Thank you. Is there any questions with regards to that? Seeing none, put to a vote. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 7D, Council Policy 901C, Recreation Facilities and Sports Fields Use. And CEO Merritt.
Thank you, Deputy. And for this one, we've had a few very good presentations, one from the Olds Grizzlies and one from Jason Jaffrey in regards to the use of ice time in our sportsplex. And there has been an ongoing discussion, especially since we've started looking at the recreation master plan for the region. So we're bringing this policy back because basically we may have to make some adjustments, or you may want to make some adjustments. We're not recommending any at this time, but I'll ask the Director of Community Services, Michelle Rock, to present this, and we'll have a discussion.
Thank you, CEO Merritt. As CEO Merritt mentioned, we did have presentations from both the Grizzlies and from Jason Jaffrey. We do run into a little bit of conflict around, not during the main season, but around the shoulder seasons, more so the spring, where both of them would really like to have primetime ice, and we just don't seem to have enough primetime ice to give out to everybody who is asking. So we, as you mentioned, we aren't making any recommendations on it today, but we just brought it forth for discussion to see if there are any changes that you would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaRock. Okay, questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. On page 87 of our package under 7D, it suggests that the pardon my term, pecking order for who it is that gets to book ice would be the same as it is during the regular season. It's my understanding that the ice rental that occurs during off-season is often for skills building. And whether you are a for-profit or a non-profit entity, you raise significant income from training athletes to become better athletes. I would suggest that because that is a for-profit type of an activity for both groups, that further consideration be given to ensure that there is a little more equity, and even the profitable ventures have an opportunity to get ice in the off-season times.
Well, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Mayor Machishka.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ryan. I'm going to push back a little bit on that comment. I believe, albeit they are both revenue drivers, I'm still wondering if we shouldn't give deference to organizations such as the Grizzlies and the Broncos and things if they want to do development camps and so forth, as that just adds to their longevity as not-for-profits and the other added things that they have during regular season. No offense to Mr. Jaffrey and his new venture, and I'm sure the skills and trainings that he provides are world class, no doubt. But if we give priority to a straight for-profit business, does that hinder our not-for-profits and our community-based organizations like minor hockey and the Olds Grizzlies and the Broncos? So I think this is a little bit more complicated situation than just leveling the playing field and equity, but to look at the long-term health of these not-for-profit organizations in our town.
Thank you. CEO Merritt, you had a comment.
I would just ask Michelle, what would happen if we had to adjust a few hours, 2-hour schedule? Who would, because we use up all our prime time, no matter what time of year it is, so who is going to lose time if we give it to a for-profit group? I think we need to know, council and the public need to know what that means, because until we have more ice surface or we can make arrangements with other municipalities, if that's possible, we are limited to those X number of hours, and as Olds keeps growing, we tend to be the hub for a lot of these groups, and I think we're only getting bigger as opposed to smaller in regards to people wanting to have ice time in Olds.
Yes, currently right now, the upcoming spring season, we do have the request in for the Grizzlies for 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. for the spring, so they would indeed be the ones that would be losing out on hours if we were to share them.
Councillor Blatz and then Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I want to go back to the presentation the Olds Grizzlies brought to us, and what I found was really beneficial to the community was the fact that they were going to train all levels of hockey, and it didn't matter what your skill level was, and they were really trying to promote youth, and they were trying to promote the betterment of our hockey program through Olds Minor Hockey. And I appreciate Mr. Jaffrey's presentation, but he's going for an elite hockey players. He's going for more direct training with them, and so I did like the process the Grizzlies went through and the presentation they gave us, because I think it's very important for all kids to realize that they can at least try to play some type of sport or hockey such as that, and they're going to be appreciated no matter what their skill level is.
Councillor Blatz, Councillor Bennett, then Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Through you to just comments, I think that I agree with the mayor. Recreation can't put a price on it, and I believe that we require support. We have to advertise it. It's something for all age groups, and all of the community who's interested in hockey like to support those groups. So money isn't necessarily the driver, and maybe a new in the regional multiplex in the future, we may have 4 sheets of ice, but for now we have to do by our community, and I'm not in favor of going after the money.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I support the fact that we need to support our nonprofit groups. That includes the college women's hockey, the Olds Grizzlies. They may be charging more money for these skating camps, but it's in order to subsidize or support their organization to stay in our community. I say kudos to Mr. Jaffrey and his for-profit company, but Councillor Blatz is right. His business is centered on training elite athletes, and we need to ensure that everybody has an opportunity, no matter what their skill level is, and that's what these other for-profit that are really not-for-profit, supported by not-for-profit organizations, actually ensure that happens. So I believe that our order is correct, that we look at our minor hockey, even minor hockey sponsors power skating clinics and that to help subsidize their operation. So minor hockey, figure skating, ACAC Broncos, AJHL Grizzlies, and then we go to non-local organizations, and on into the for-profit companies. We've only got 2 ice surfaces. We have limited opportunities because of the 2 ice surfaces. And you're right, if we have a massive regional complex, that too would not have enough hours, available to it.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Overwater, did you have your hand up?
Well, I didn't, but I can make a comment. Thank you, Mayor Ryan. We did talk about this with when the Grizzlies were here and when Jason Jaffrey, when they both gave their presentations about possibly those groups even talking to other groups, other communities like Didsbury and Sundre, Bowden, Torrington. I mean, people have to start realizing that they have to travel. I mean, if you live in the city, there's no doubt you're going to travel an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get to whatever arena you want to go to. And, sometimes we get used to thinking, well, we only 5-10 minutes from the arena. Well, maybe we need to be 15 minutes from the arena, and maybe that's Didsbury. I think somehow our communities, we need to get together. Maybe it's through the municipal area partnership. I think somehow we have to have a meeting with these other groups in order to maybe help each other out with whatever program we're offering and they're offering, and maybe we can do that. Just a comment.
Thank you, Councillor Overwater. CEO Merritt?
I think that's going to be invaluable to have that discussion after we get the recreation master plan for the whole region, and also look beyond our boundaries of Mountain View County to Bowden and Torrington and places like that, because I think we do need to see where we can maximize time, and we may have to end up buying for extra time, which is not a bad thing if it's basically supporting the groups from all over Mountain View County and beyond, because that's what we're looking at. So 2 things are going to happen this year. One is we're going to have this sport recreation master plan, and that'll be available late in 2021. And in 2022, we do have the Pinty's Cup coming, so that's going to be a shoulder season kind of scenario, which means 2022 isn't going to have a lot of adjustments to it because we are going to utilize that ice time for that period. But I do think that leads to a very good discussion for for the fall of 22 and for beyond. I think that needs to be a discussion. I think it's ideal for MAP to invite those other communities that have facilities and have that discussion, and maybe there will be some solutions regionally to help this, because I thought Mr. Jaffrey's presentation was excellent. He has an ideal situation, but again, we are stuck with limited ice time, and so wherever we can help as a region, I think that's something we need to look into.
Thank you, CEO. And I just wanted to comment as well, and that is, when you take a look at the Grizzlies, they may be making a bit of profit on whatever they're going to offer for minor hockey during their camps, but I also think that that's profits going into the Grizzlies and helping them stay in town, and that's very important to us as a community to keep them here. And while I appreciate Mr. Jaffrey's presentation and wholeheartedly think that it's a great idea, we just don't have the ice surface available to him, and perhaps we could help him along the lines of connecting up with the other communities that Councilor Overwater had mentioned, and see if we can't help facilitate some opportunities to get him the ice that he requires. Councilor Thompson?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Ryan, and thank you to members of council for a very respectful conversation on this one. My sense here is that we have some tremendous nonprofits, and they do great things in the community, and I have no intention of disadvantaging them in this conversation by cost or things that way. My my question and my rationale is as we grow as a community, we do have people that can bring other things to the community, and some of those things will be business models. And I think there probably is a business model for hockey training, and it's probably served very well by our nonprofits. But perhaps some businesses, and there may be more than one, that might also have an interest in this area. And so my raising this was to ensure that we are both pro-business and pro-nonprofit. And so I just wanted to raise it so that we could have that dialogue, not to disadvantage, but to ensure that we are a welcoming community for business as well.
Thank you for that comment. Okay, so can we get a motion on the floor? Unless there's any other comments to make? Nope. Councilor Warner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Yes, I move that we accept policy 901C, recreational facilities and sports fields use. And we didn't have any changes, did we? No. So we just accept for information then.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Any other comments? Mayor Mishishka.
Point of order, I think we need to direct administration to bring it back to there's no changes, right? Very good.
No.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. And we'll move along to 7E, which is Council Policy 902C, Green Space Areas. CEO Merritt.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And as you can see by this policy, there are a number of recommended changes that we're making to 902C, green spaces. We've had a lot of discussions and service level on this in the past, and this is why these changes are being brought forth, to see if they match what Council was looking for in regards to the service levels that we were putting in place. So with that, I'll ask Director Wagstaff to speak to 902C.
Again, we've had a number of ongoing discussions that have stemmed out of service level, as well as having this presented to council to review previously. Most of the definitions, the changes there are just housekeeping, adding things for clarity so that we understand what each of the spaces are, the difference between a green space, a sports field, a trail, just so that we have that clarity as we're speaking both internally as well as externally with users. The Class A, B, and C is where we've had a number of service level discussions to ensure that we are treating those areas, and this is now on page 3, that we understand what the levels of service to each of those areas are. Again, for our internal levels, so that we don't slowly expand that scope unintentionally over time, and as staff turn over, that they can have an understanding as to what the levels of service are for each of these areas, as well when we communicate with our user groups, that they have an understanding that's in literally black and white as to what the levels of service are for each of our facilities when we're talking outdoor spaces. The one piece that I will just draw to your attention that we have not discussed as administration and council is under sports fields. We have Deer Meadow School South Diamond is the only diamond that we officially provide any service and care to. We do not officially care for or maintain maintenance on the North Diamond. That's a piece that I just wanted to draw to your attention, because it is a communication piece that we have to circle back to our users so that the public understands that diamond at the Deer Meadow School that's on the north side is not one that we service. So it is left as a space. Other than that, the pieces that are in red between green spaces were from the back and forth, just to indicate where we're at on our Class A, Class B, and Class C list. And with that, I open it for discussion and input from council.
Well, thank you, Director Wagstaff. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'm just curious why we would choose to do one at Holy Trinity and not the other, and how do we communicate that?
Do you mean Deer Meadow? Yes, Deer Meadow. So I'll share the history as to why. Historically, previously the town didn't do maintenance on either. We do have a public utility pathway that goes to the schools that we maintain. And Special Olympics had used the one diamond, and they had approached the Lions Club as a service club and did a partnership where they upgraded the South Diamond. And at that point in time, and I believe this, I'd have to look up the exact date, but I believe it was 2010, 2011 timeframe, an agreement was made with the town that once the Lions invested their volunteer effort into the upgrades of that diamond, that the town would upkeep that diamond for use, primarily for Special Olympics, so they would have that opportunity. With COVID, we have not, because Special Olympics has not returned to their regular operations. They've been ceased for 1.5 years now. We have not had any opportunity yet to discuss with them their future with baseball on whether or not they would use that diamond or whether they would utilize some time up at Rotary Athletic Park. For them, there is some advantages to Deer Meadow in the informal conversations that we've had with them to this point, primarily to do with location and walkability. But that's not an end-all, but we haven't explored that fully with them yet. But that's the history to why we were servicing the South Diamond and not the North Diamond at the school site.
Thank you, Director Wagstaff, for the clarity. Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much. Just a curiosity why we've moved the cemetery from Class A to Class B.
Director Wagstaff.
Yes. I may have to go back to some notes on that on the back and forth. I don't recall offhand exactly why we moved it from C up to B. Well, I know why we moved it out of A, because it was full weed control and pesticide and that, so it was being shifted. So which
Clarification.
Is it under green spaces?
Yeah, it used to be Class A turf green, and it's all been crossed out. The new draft has it put under Class B, green spaces. I'm okay with that, but I just need to know why. Why would we not to make sure that we apply pesticides and fertilizer to our cemetery to make it look good?
I don't know the answer to that, so I am going to
Thank
have to
you.
get back to council with
Thank
that
you.
answer.
Thank you, Director Wagstaff. Is there any, sorry, Kelly, sorry, Ms. Lloyd? No. She's got her finger up in the air for no reason. Okay, so anybody else who have any questions? All right, how about a motion? Oh, sorry, Councilor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Well, again, I think, when we make changes like this, we take a look at it and we see how it works for that year. And if it turns out that it didn't work, then we change it again. So it's all relative.
Yep, that's how I look at it too. Let's see. If it doesn't work this year, we'll change it for the next year. Any other questions or comments, concerns? Councilor Harper.
I'm sorry, but I need a question answered about the cemetery. I think that we still need to make it look good. So I need that question answered.
But
So-
Director Wagstaff said he didn't have the answer, so.
But we do have it now.
Oh,
I said I would get
all
back.
right.
I didn't think it would be that quick.
Director
But here it
Wagstaff.
is. We would place cemetery in Class B. It would still get its weeds dealt with on a regular basis, and it still gets fertilizer. It's still good. It doesn't need the required care that a turf would get, like at a ball diamond or a play center.
Perfect, good answer. CEO Merritt, you had your hand up.
I will.
That was a better answer than I was going to give. I was going to
It's a
say,
better
yeah.
answer than I would give, but we can thank Jillian for providing that answer to Kelly and previously Scott Chan.
What I was going to say is that we have a week to get that answer and bring it back for approval, because this is only for information.
That's a good answer, too. Thank you, CEO Merritt. Okay, can we get a motion then if there's no other questions? Councillor Blatz, you in the,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that the town accepts policy 902C, green spaces for information, and is brought back to a future council meeting for approval. Thank you.
thank you very much. Is there any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, I will call a vote. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And we don't have anything else on the agenda, so I'll take a motion for adjournment. Mayor Majewska. All in favor? All in favor? Thank you. Motion's carried. Thank you all for